Greetings, fellow visionaries. We are Visionary Readers Book Club, and I am Sibongiseni Mgolozeli. I am super happy to be your MC this evening. I am not alone. We also have a backup MC. Her name is Rulani Mabina. In case something happens to me and I'm kicked out of the meeting, please know that she will be taking over, or anyone else who will be ready to do that. Visionary Readers Book Club, we are a club that has been in existence for the past 3 years now, and we pride ourselves as lovers of books. We have a mission and a vision as well as a purpose. I'll start with the mission, which I think is the most inspiring, which is to promote the reading culture within the African continent and beyond. Our vision is to see each and every African home with a bookshelf, and as long as that bookshelf is bigger than your television screen, we are happy. Today we have a program. As usual, we have about 5 reviewers. We also have a guest speaker who will be joining us, I think, around 6:30. With all that being said, fellow visionaries, I will start with our first reviewer. Her name is Sophie Maseko. She will be reviewing a book by Stephen Bartlett. The title of the book is called The Diary of a CEO. Once again, please help me welcome Sophie Maseko to review the book, The Diary of a CEO. Over to you, ma'am.
All right, cool. All right, my name is Sophie Maseko, and I'll be doing the review of The Diary of a CEO. All right, so I heard a lot of comments about this book, and I had been prolonging to go and read it. Eventually, I picked the book up, and it was the best decision of my life. He sets 4 pillars of philosophy in his book. So his book is structured as so. It is the first pillar, which is the self, the second pillar being the story, and the third pillar being the philosophy, and the fourth pillar being the team. So I'm going to explain certain parts of the book, and then I'm also going to explain my favorite parts. So in his first philosophy, which is being self, he tells the story of who he is and why he wrote this book and how it's written. And he also speaks about one of my favorite parts, which is the 5 buckets. And those buckets are very vital for you to grow, not just as an employee, but in all spheres of life, because he also speaks about emotional, mental, philosophical, and also work life. And in the 5 buckets, he names them as follows. The first bucket being the knowledge, second bucket being the skill, third bucket being your network, and the fourth and fifth is resources and reputation. So in the first philosophy, which is the self, he communicates that 5 of those buckets, 3 things can be taken away from you. So that could be your network, your resources, and reputation. However, if you keep on every day beating on 2 of your buckets being your knowledge and skill, then that's something somebody can't take away from you. With that being said as well, he also communicates about not ending or continually learning, continually beating on your craft. So whenever I draft a review for a book or draft a review for my blog, what I do is I write 9 different drafts, and he communicates about always stress on the small things, because those small things can lead to a greater masterpiece or disaster for you. And then he goes into chapter, or should I say philosophy 2, which is the story. And then he communicates about the Goldilocks effect, which is one thing I loved. In the Goldilocks effect, he talks about how we can find our simple answers in a simple tale for kids, which is the Goldilocks effect. So he gives an example of maybe pricing your product or your service. So he gives you the high-priced one, the middle-priced one, and then, of course, the low-priced one. A lot of people won't go for the low price or the high price because it's like either out of your budget or it's too low of your budget, will make you look cheap. Whereas the middle one, it's actually affordable and it doesn't make you look too expensive or too cheap. And with that being said, a lot of people go in for that. So that gives us an attitude or behavioral status of, okay, he just offered me what I wanted, but instead he offered you what he needed and wanted. And then he goes on to, again, the repetition of like your small stuff, which is pillar 3, which is the philosophy of beating on the small things. And I remember watching one video, one YouTuber said he takes 9 days for him to prepare one video on YouTube. He's like, does my sound right? Does my my resolution, is it 4K? Is it right? Will people be drawn to it, or people be drawn away from it? So it's something that we must also play in our everyday life. Those small habits or behaviors or hurdles we overcome is actually vital for eventually in the long run. And then finally, he also goes and talks about the team, which in conclusion is what he talks about in the end. So that's when he communicates about the 3 bars for rebuilding a great teams and how you must leverage power over progress, which was actually kind of different for me because it was just like most of the time I usually see an organization and it's like it's run by power, but it's not really run by power. It's actually run by the progressions, the small atomic kind of behaviors that actually lead to the greater building of what that organization stands for. And it goes back to its vision and its mission. And one of my favorite quotes from the book would have to be, go be bizarre. So for me, I'm not a person that loves to public speak. So when he was like, do the abnormal, which is bizarre because it's not something that you're normed to do. It's something where you have to do something outside of what you do. It's first few weeks quite challenging. After a while, it becomes norm. After a while, you get kind of missed either your memory, like example, gym. So when you go back to the gym after a long time, it's muscle memory. So doing the bizarre for somebody is actually weird because when I read it, I was just like, what? Bizarre. But he writes this book so nicely in a form, it's not too much information and he gets to the point, and it's not too much factual things, but it's also enjoyable and entertaining and informative. And if there's anybody out there who's wanting something that can make them believe in their dream again or want to start again or just going to go for that different position, either promotion or just better your life, I'd go Diary of a CEO. And that is my review for tonight.
Thank you so much, Sophie, for your review. That was great. I think I had so much interest, being one with ambitions to be a CEO one day. So thanks for sharing those nuggets, and definitely we'll get the book. There is a question on the chat from Andre that says, what would you say is the main reason someone should read this book?
Personally, I would go back to finding out what your purpose is. So he focuses a lot on purpose, and he also focuses a lot on your behavior. So a lot of the time we fall off the wagon and we just give up on our dreams or we settle for where we are. And he comes with a book and says, come out of your comfort zone and like literally reignite that the fire that once burnt out. So it would be an encouragement and it'd be an inspiration, and it'd also be informative and educational book on why you should read the book.
Thank you for that. I see there's another question on the chat, and this will probably be the last question, and then we move to the next speaker. And maybe, so the other one is, please explain Stephen Bartlett and his big impact on society.
Oof. All right. So I did a lot of research specifically on this book, and later on actually my channel, which is also a book reviewing channel, hopefully one of the admins will add the link below. I will be explaining further on what this book is really about. So what impact and what impact he has on society. So based on his channel and also on what I've read in the book in itself, he's a lot on the youth. So he's looking for the next generation. And he's like, the next generations don't have mentors. Like we don't have mentors that are mentoring you. So one time I was speaking to a very close mentor of mine, and he said a lot of people don't realize that mentoring is not just do this job or you've done this job, well done. No, it's more of, are you mentally coping? Are you physically coping? Are you environmentally coping with everybody around you as well as with the job? And are you growing and actually impactfully looking for the long run? In the long run, we're looking at, are you able to handle this if I have to drop down at the job, or if I lose my job as CCUO? Are you ready to get to that level, especially in the long steps of line? So he also communicates and emphasizes this. There's no shortcut to success. You need to understand there's going to be a lot of work. Those small beatings and small hurdles you have to overcome one by one, they eventually pay off. And it might not seem as much now, but eventually later on, you're able to handle that bigger task. You're able to be responsible. You're able to be that leader or mentor that aspires and inspires people. So in society, he's creating greater leaders and good leaders that are able to lead from behind, middle, and the front.
Thank you so much. So much nuggets shared. And please do also drop your podcast or YouTube channels handle on the chat. There is one more question that I've acknowledged on the chat as well. So please also attend to that. If you can just type the response there, that will be great. Ladies and gentlemen, we will swiftly move on to our next speaker, which is Wendy Mashilwane, to review the book, The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. Wendy Mashilwane reviewing the book, The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. Over to you, Wendy.
Thank you so much, Relani. Okay, yes, good evening, everyone, and it's a pleasure to join the meeting this evening and to review the book that I read, I think last year. But I just thought, you know what, let me just share what I've read and what I remember from the book, The 4 Agreements, because it's a book that I'd always wanted to read. I had seen it, I think on different people's suggestions and recommendations. And I saw like a short snippet of what the agreements are. And it actually, like, I just wanted to know, what is this book about? I need to get it. And eventually I got it and I read it. One of the best books I've read, I think, in a long time. The book is really, I think, what I can say, a wisdom book. If I can summarize it, it's a wisdom book. Because what Don does is he actually starts off, let me just show you the chapters. So there's about, sorry guys, I'm just going to the chapters. There's a couple of chapters in the book. Yes, sorry, I was just going there. So there's about 7 chapters, right? And then what he does in the first chapter, he actually sets a scene where he talks about what we call domestication and the dream of the planet. And in there, so before he starts talking about the agreements, he's setting a scene about, based on ancient wisdom, what we call the Toltec. The Toltec were some ancient wisdom people that sort of wrote around things, around the planet, the way we see things, the way we think about ourselves. It was quite some wisdom that they shared, which is really impactful. And what he did, he shared some background around them. And what I'm just going to read here, he says, Toltec knowledge arises from the same essential unity of truth as all the sacred historic traditions found around the world. It's not a religion, but it honors spiritual masters who have taught on the earth. And while it does embrace spirit, it is most accurately described as a way of life, distinguished by the accessibility of happiness and love. So this book is based on that Toltec wisdom. And then in there, what it does, it talks about, just high level, 3 things that really impact us in life, which is around what we believe about ourselves, the judgment that we have around situations, and what we call the victimhood. So what he says we do as human beings, we are like domesticated, so children get taught, this is how you think, this is what you're a good boy if you do this, you're a good girl if you do this, if you don't do this, punishment will come. So he's saying the fact that we get domesticated means that at the end of the day, we get trained by the world and we get trained by society to believe certain things about ourselves. Even religion is a way that also something that domesticates us. And then he says we become so well trained or domesticated in the sense that we actually lose ourselves. And then we start believing things that are maybe not necessarily true. And then what happens with the belief? Then something happens, for example, judgment. With judgment, he says we carry the blame, the guilt, the shame of maybe if you feel like you didn't live up to what you were, domesticated to be, then you start blaming yourself and you start not believing in yourself, you're having shame and guilt. And then he says we judge everything and everybody according to how we're domesticated. And sometimes that's not always right. And what he then says, if you look at these 3 things, they impact the way we see the world and what we do and what we believe. And then he says, we need to challenge our beliefs. He says, we didn't choose these beliefs, right, that we have, because remember they were domesticated or given upon us, but somehow we agreed to them. So maybe if somebody told you, you are not beautiful enough or you're not good enough, they told you that, or you heard that, or you experienced that, and then you believed it. Even though you didn't agree with it, you believed it. So he says the big job starts by us challenging those beliefs. And then what he also says, 95% of the beliefs that we have stored in our minds are nothing but lies, and we suffer because we believe those lies. So you need to, one of the biggest things he says, you need to actually sit and think, what do I believe about myself? Especially, so never mind, yes, you'll think about the world and everything else, but start with yourself. What is it that I believe about myself, and how is that impacting me? And then what I want to show you, what I just want to read again, he talks about in that 95% of beliefs really being bad, bad for us. He writes something that's quite, that really, really talks to me. He said, humans punish themselves endlessly for not being what they believe they should be. They become very self-abusive, and they use other people to abuse themselves as well. Then he says, but nobody abuses us more than we abuse ourselves. Very profound. Then he says, in your whole life, nobody has ever abused you more than you have abused yourself. So I was like, sure, it really gave me a lot of thought to say, okay, now let me really start working back in terms of what I believe about myself, how I see the world, how I judge, how I've seen myself as a victim. And then what he says, for you to now work through all of that. So I'm really cutting it short because obviously I don't have the whole, time to speak about all of the first chapter. This is just the first chapter. We're sharing all these lessons. He says, then you need to have a new dream, because a new dream means then you're going to have new agreements with yourself. And he says, the most important agreements that you're going to make are the ones that you make with yourself. Because remember what he said, nobody abuses you more than you abuse yourself. So you need to change agreements that you have and that you believe about yourself. And he says, if you want to live a life of joy and fulfillment, you have to find the courage to break those agreements that are fear-based and claim your personal power. So he's really, just in the first chapter, I said there's 7 chapters, just in that first chapter, he really sets the context to why then he wrote the 4 agreements. So what are those 4 agreements? I'm going to read them to you, but I'm not going to talk about them in lots of detail, because then it will actually give you then the motivation to go and get the book. So I'll just share with you what those 4 agreements are. I wanted to just set that context and that scene around beliefs, victimhood, judgment, and just that wisdom that if you want to live a happy life, you need to really change all of that. And then he says, you need a very strong will in order to adopt the 4 agreements. So the book talks about the 4 agreements. If you can begin to live your life with these agreements, the transformation in your life will be amazing. You will see the drama of hell disappear right before your eyes. Because he says, because of our beliefs, judgments, victimhood, and all of that, we're sort of living in a hell, right? And for you to change and to get out of that hell, you need to change by living according to the 4 agreements. So quickly, what are those 4 agreements? The first one, be impeccable with your word. He says this is one of the most difficult ones to honor. So be impeccable with your word. It's one of the most difficult to honor, because this one is really going against everything that you've sort of been trained or domesticated to do over time, which is your word, what you say about yourself, what you confess, what you speak out, because your word is your power. And words have, you know that you've heard this, words create our reality and they create our life. So it is through this word that whatever you speak, everything manifests. So he's saying, be impeccable with your word, meaning don't say or do or speak out anything that goes against creating a better life, right? Creating that dream life, a positive, happy, love-filled, fulfilled life. So that's the first agreement. The second agreement, he says, don't take anything personally. There's a part where he talks, this one is again a very, very good one, because not taking things personally is something that I think we tend to struggle with as people, and especially myself. So here he tells us that whatever happens to you, whatever people do, whatever people say, or what's happening in the world, don't take it personally. It's got nothing to do with you. That's what he says. And he says, he made an example in the book where he said, even if somebody were to stand, let's say somebody breaks into the house now, or somebody stands and points a gun and ready to kill you or whatever, even in that very moment, don't take it personally. It's not about you, which again, I found very profound. Then the third agreement, so yeah, don't take anything personally. It's the second agreement. The third agreement, don't make assumptions. So again, as human beings, it says we have a tendency to make assumptions about everything. And we believe that that assumption that we've made is the truth. So again, if you think about your life, the people in your life, work, the government currently, elections, what's happening, we have assumptions and we believe those assumptions are truth. And then they already make us live in a certain way because now we're believing them as the truth, and we start creating a certain, feeling and a certain belief and a certain, again, you start acting out what you believe is true. So he's saying, let me read it exactly. Don't make assumptions, because assumptions then can really be your fault at the end of the day. Then the last agreement that he shares in the book is, I'm reading it as it is, always do your best. He says, if anything, in all of these agreements, if you do your best in anything, in whatever situation, whatever circumstance, you actually create the life that you want to create. And he says, doing your best, no less, no more, but just doing your best is what will help you create. And he says, in any circumstance, it doesn't matter if you are sick, tired, as long as you do your best, there's no way you will judge yourself. So we judge ourselves because sometimes we're not doing our best, we're not giving our best. We're doing maybe the bare minimum, we're doing little, we know we're capable of more, right? So he says, if you do that, you will not judge yourself. And remember, if you don't judge yourself, then you're not living in this hell or in this negative space. So he says, regardless of the quality, keep doing your best, be no more or no less than your best. He also says, don't overdo it, just do your best. So yeah, that's like, I know the time is moving, so that's like just high level, the 4 agreements, and which I thought if you can just remember them and try and really live by them, your life or our lives will definitely be in a much better space. And I found that since I read the book, from time to time, when I start telling myself certain things, then I start saying to myself, remember, agreement number 1 is be impeccable with your word, meaning don't say things that are against what you should believe. So yes, nice, great book, very wisdom filled, spiritual filled. And yeah, I don't know how much time I've taken, Vulani, but yeah, I think let me close here. Guys, thanks for the opportunity. And yes, please do get the book. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Wendy. Can we give her a virtual clap or unmute and just recognize Wendy and thank you for reviewing this wonderful book. We really appreciate you taking time to reading it firstly and then sharing your knowledge with us. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Rolani.
I will mute you, but this is us and welcome to Visionary Readers Book Club. We are just on speaker number 2 and I will be taking questions. If there's anyone that would like to pose a question to Wendy, please do raise your hand and we'll acknowledge you. I'm not seeing anything on the chat.
Okay, no, it's fine. I'll be on the call in case later. Thanks, Rolani.
Right, I don't see any questions or any hands either. So thank you so much, Wendy. Again, we'll move right along to our next speaker, who is Mbalunkosi, reviewing the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Mbalunkosi, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Madam MC, for the opportunity to review a book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. As you can see, my book is a bit old. That means I've had it for a long time. I want to say that I didn't buy this book. I actually stole it. So stealing is good if you're stealing the good thing. Right. A wise man leaves inheritance for his children, but a fool leaves debt for his children. This is a quote I saw on Pinterest the other day while I was busy reading this book. And what is supported by this book is exactly that statement, that what we don't understand is that when you leave a legacy is something that you leave for those people that last longer than when you are gone. And that legacy is carried on in the family. So a lot of family legacy is left and that legacy is debt. This book is by Robert Kiyosaki. Robert Kiyosaki is a self-made millionaire. He is a person that had an opportunity to deal with 5 things. And this is what he talks about in the book. Firstly, I want to make sure that people understand that this book is not about money. This book is about these 5 things. Firstly, it's about financial education, which is something that is very important. Secondly, it's about the power of mentorship, something that we know little or nothing about. Thirdly, it's about discipline and action, where you have discipline and you are able to take action. It's also about creativity, and it is a challenge to the current educational system. Let me start from the bottom. So why is it a challenge to the current educational system? It's because in this book, Robert talks about how the current system or the current educational system is not teaching us to think, or is not teaching us how to think, but what to think. So when we see a person driving an expensive car wearing beautiful clothes, our first assumption is that this person is wealthy or this person is rich. Some people dress up to show up as rich. Some people are actually wealthy. And that is what this book is about. The creativity is that Robert Kiyosaki knows very well that people are lured by what you say. He titled this book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I mean, if you read the title of the book, you want to know what is this person talking about. And this is what shows the genius in him. In the book, he explained why he used this title. He said that he wanted to pull people in, to give them something to think about. Here he is helping us learn how to think, not what to think. The action and discipline, this book is more of a encouragement to really step out of your comfort zone. Don't sit there and wait for things to happen. Get out there and do and make things happen. The power of mentorship. The book is titled Rich Dad, Poor Dad, meaning Robert Kiyosaki had the opportunity to be mentored, and to be mentored by the best two people in his life. He calls them a rich dad and a poor dad. And I want to sit on that. The power of mentorship comes from the ability for us to be able to understand that life is not just about walking a journey, but it's an experience to be lived. He had the opportunity to be trained by someone who was doing something and by someone who knew something but did nothing. His poor dad, which is an educational person, he is not really educated in financial aspect, but he is schooled in philosophical aspect. What I want to praise the poor dad for is that when Robert and his friend Mike went to him and said they want to learn how to make money, his poor dad, actually his biological father, the poor dad, said to him, if you want to know how to make money, go to Mike's dad, who was in the business, who was an entrepreneur, to go and learn about money. That for me is a support statement that says that you are there in life to plug your kids, to set set your kids up. The poor dad, understanding his position, he did not feel threatened, but he set his son up to be a millionaire today. He planted a seed, even though in the book, people may read and not understand why was the poor dad challenging him. I feel that if it wasn't for the poor dad, Robert Kiyosaki wouldn't be a millionaire today. Firstly, he planted the seed by allowing Robert to go and have a better education, a better aspect of life, a different feel and look and view of life than what he had. Yes, he encouraged him to go to school, get an education, but him being exposed to someone who was doing what Robert wanted to do was the best step that his father could set him on. Also, Robert was one of those privileged people because not only did he learn from someone who knew something but did not do anything about it, he also learned from someone who was doing something, who was literally pressing him, pushing him, making him understand that doing something, and especially not being afraid to go out there and to go against the tide, it's what sets you up to be the better person in life. And also, he taught him not only just in speaking, but he also included him. He also gave him the feeling of what it feels like to be in a boardroom, what it feels like to be in meeting. It's one thing for you to learn from looking at someone, but it's also another thing to learn from doing. And this is what the rich dad did for Robert and Mike. He set them up to be able to be in these meetings, to be able to sit in his meeting when he sat with his accountants. He also set them up and gave them the idea, gave them the exposure at a very young age, gave them the exposure of how it feels like to be at work. And this is the statement that I got from them. It's like, if you don't take responsibility of your life, you will live all your life taking orders. So what he exposed Mike and Robert to is the world of working, where you've got to work 9 to 5. And we think that, oh no, we work for the salary, but he taught them to never work to earn, but work to learn. All the things that Robert got, even though he was fighting with his poor dad again, but all the opportunity that he got to experience when he had to work at a very young age, when they established their own business, him and his friend Mike at a very young age, it's the ability to know how to think, but not what to think. If there's one thing that I wish that Robert would have done, is that I wish he would have acknowledged the beauty of having two parents and having two challenging thoughts, because that actually cultivated his creativity, cultivated his thought patterns. It has encouraged him to be more disciplined and to also choose which road he wanted to take. Again, I emphasize the good of having the poor dad, because a lot of people are schooled philosophically, but they are not educated in terms of finances. And in that regard, we tend to always get into a red race. This is what inspired him to become a finance teacher or a financial education person, because he wanted people to understand the differences in the terms, in what the school will name a term or define a term, and in what reality is. One of the things that I got from him was the actual difference between an asset and a liability. A lot of us believe, and I know I'm going to be short for this, a lot of us believe that a house is an asset. But according to the true financial literacy, an asset is something that brings in income. It increases an income or income flow. So if you've got an asset that is taking money out of your pocket, that is not an asset, that is a liability. And come to think of it, when you review and you check how we are structuring our lives, we always go for, I want this house. And then once you get an increase, you go for a bigger house or for a bigger car. And those are all liabilities. So if there's one thing I can ask people to do, is that read this book, especially if you have a family. If you have a family and you have kids, encourage them to read this book. At a very young age, you are planting a seed of a seed of knowing how to think, and also encouraging your kids to know that when someone comes to you and they throw a different perspective, it's not really a challenge, or it's to say that you are not intelligent, but it's actually to say that this is your window when you see things. But when someone else comes with a different view, it widens your window. And I must say that big ups again to poor dad for allowing Robert to have such an opportunity to have a different aspect of life. If you really want to know about financial education, get the book. This book is not about money. This book is about financial education. It's about power of mentorship. It's about discipline and action. It's about creativity. And also it is a challenge to the current education system. What I want to leave with you is that this is what Robert says. He says, money is one form of power, but what is more powerful is the financial education. What you don't know today could be the reason why you die tomorrow. And what you don't know today could be the reason why you are left behind. What you know today and don't act on could be the reason why you are even worse than you were yesterday. Those are my words. Get yourself the book. If you can steal it, it's okay. I stole it and it worked well for me. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Bali, for that comprehensive review. Can we also just acknowledge her and give her a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen? Virtual claps, I see them coming through. Thank you. Thank you once more. There is just one question that I would like you to answer in 30 seconds, and it's from Sophie Maseko asking, to the families who don't have the luxury to pay for a mentor, where can one get a financial mentor based on the book? Or any other authors associate a follow-up question to any other authors or African authors that you could possibly suggest?
Okay, so I haven't read much about financial matters in terms of African authors, and I think that's very good, because then it's easy to relate to what we went through or to what we go through financially. But one of the books that I can recommend whenever, it's a book by Busisi Lesho. It's called Black People and Money. That's the book I would recommend. Sorry, I'll get the copy of it later on during the meeting. But that's another book that talks about the financial education it's not really about money. It's about how educated are you, how well knowledgeable are you in terms of finance. And in terms of a mentor, I think we've got this perception that I need to pay, I can't afford a mentor. Not really. It's not about that. I've got about 5 mentors, and all of them, I'm not paying them, but these are the people that I look up to. How you create or how you establish a mentorship relationship is not being afraid to ask questions. Go to people and tell them, I like what you're doing. And one of the things that Robert is saying in this book is that don't allow someone who is not doing what you want to do to tell you how to do it, because then you're always going to get the opposite. So when you see someone and you like what they are doing, go to them, ask them. If you look at the top performers, they are always willing to help, but what they're always confronted with is, oh, you think you are better because you're top performer. They get little to nothing when it comes to people coming to them and asking them, can you teach me how to do it? And they are always willing to help, including myself. If you come to me and you see I'm doing something that I really love and I'm good at, then when you come to me, definitely I'm going to share with you. So when you see people that are doing well, don't just sit and admire them from a distance. Go to them, ask them, tell them, I want to do what you're doing. I don't want to be you, but I want to do what you're doing. Would you please teach me? And in that way, those are smart people because they understand that is legacy. Legacy is something that lasts longer than even when you're gone. And that's what I want to do. I am born a human being, but I want to die an institute. And
thank you.
You just need to ask. To God.
Thanks, Mbali. I see we can go on and on and on about this topic, and I love what's happening in the chat. We can, continue to keep the conversations going there. Really love the interaction and the wisdom shared today, but we have to move on to our next speaker. So thank you so much for that. And what I'm picking up today is the power of connection. That's what I'm picking up a thread from the first speaker. It's connection. It's about our mind and how do we change our thinking about all this, about any topic or any sphere of your life. So I think there's a lesson for us to take from today's meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, without wasting any further time, I would like to welcome our guest speaker for today that has graced us with her presence, Lebo Mazibuko, who will be reviewing her book, Bantu Knox. And Bantu Knox explores the complicated mother-daughter relationship and trying to come together to understand each other. And I think Lebo will be alluding more to what her book entails. And we're just looking forward to hearing from you today. So let's give a round of applause to Lebo Mazibuko, reviewing her own book, Bantu Knox. Lebo Mazibuko. Welcome, over to you.
Hi, thanks for having me. I've been listening. I joined in a bit late, but I've listened to the other reviews that have been going on. It's been quite insightful. And I think a good way to start the week, motivation to to work. So my book is called Bantu Knox. I have it here with me. That's this one over here. So basically, Bantu Knox is it's exploring 3 generations of women. There is Mama Nora, and there is Dineo, and there's Naledi. Naledi is the protagonist. She's telling the story. So we're following Naledi's journey, and Naledi's journey basically in trying to discover who she is and trying to find out what it means to be a woman, especially in today's society that almost wants to dictate the rules of how we should be and present ourselves in the world. She's trying to discover her passions as well, but also against the backdrop of the township culture, and while also while also battling the things that religion and tradition tells us as especially in Black communities. But also there's so many other issues that we don't often discuss because of those things, because of tradition, because of culture, because of religion. There's certain topics that tend to be very taboo and off the table in our households, in our homes. Issues around sex, issues around identity, issues around relationships. And what is very interesting is that Naledi is a girl who is raised in a household predominantly full of women. It is her mom, it is her grandmother. But the issues around womanhood and the things that we face as young girls are often topics that we don't talk about. We don't openly have conversations around our bodies. We don't openly have conversations around heartbreak. We don't openly have conversations around relationships and friendships, and even trying to understand ourselves and the paths that we are moving through. These are conversations that she often feels ashamed of having, because also her grandmother is that person who is a very Bible preaching, and I think a lot of us were raised in those sorts of environments where the Bible is like, yes, in some ways having religion there anchors us as people, it grounds us, but also a lot of us find ourselves lost. A lot of us find ourselves suppressing a lot of issues, a lot of feelings, because you feel there is a shame attached to natural feelings. I'll make an example, a very simple example of saying, if I am going through a phase where, not even a phase, if I'm going through just the natural progression of girl meets boy, girl is developing feelings for a boy, there are all these sexual feelings that start arising within us as women. But it is very difficult for me to now go to my grandmother or to my mother and say, hey, I'm feeling this way. Hey, I'm experiencing these things. So the book is there basically to try and open up this dialogue that doesn't exist between us as Black women, and but also confronting mommy daughter issues, but daughter and daddy issues that we often take into our relationships, and even how we view ourselves as young women, how we get scarred by certain interactions because we don't know how to interact with men. We don't know how to have conversations with men. We feel like there's something dirty, even being in a space in a small room with a guy. You feel like there's something very dirty about it. So yeah, that's like a very the overall premise of Bantu Knots.
Thank you, Lebo. Can we also just give her a round of applause and some virtual claps before we open up to questions? I know a lot of us, that have read your book actually could resonate with the book, growing up in similar setups in our own families, and I think also challenged having girl daughters and girl children who ask us these questions, and us now being the ones to emulate what being a woman means, especially in this generation that we live in. So thank you so much for that. I will go into just check quickly who has a question, or whoever has posted a question. Can you please unmute and ask the question?
I actually asked the question, right? So the question was, as you climb up the corporate ladder and stuff, so some people or society has deemed, what can I say,
straighten your hair, your lashes, because there's a part in the book where the girl like trades all her beauty, her natural beauty, and trades it for false beauty, well, quote unquote false beauty. How does one actually confidently wear her afro, or should I say her crown, with pride, without being heavily persecuted, or should I say heavily influenced by the negative comments? So I work in a bookstore currently, and when I do certain traditional habits, certain customers would look at me in a certain way, like, that's so rural, like giving back an adult the money back like this, or thanking that day or something like that. And it'll be like, that's so rural. So how would you give somebody who is actually coming slowly out of that and give them the confidence to be like, your traditional ways are not rural, but they are respectful?
Sure. I think there's a lot of misinformation, ignorance also against our cultural practices. And it really is to us. There will always be, when something is new, there'll always be resistance. It's almost like if I exercise, if I try to exercise, and I'm not a person who likes the gym, there's gonna be resistance, there's gonna be pain. But it is on me to keep going and to push past the pain, to push past the resistance until something actually happens. And I think it therefore becomes important to educate people in those spaces. It therefore becomes important for you to be rooted and anchored in your own beliefs, whatever your beliefs are. And not to be swayed. I mean, I find that trends are constantly changing. And I'm seeing a lot of trends where, especially with us Black girls, there's all these, how we are changing our bodies. There's the BBL thing, this BBL trend going on. And it fascinates me because I'm like, but we've always had big bums. How is this a thing now? How are we going and buying big bums, which we have? Do you understand? But I feel like we have to be very, very grounded. We have to be very solid in what we believe in and steady with it. You will sometimes look stupid, and often you look stupid. I know people use the reference. I'm a Naledi girl. Those who've read the book will understand. But I was raised in a very religious home, so I might throw in some religious stuff in there. Noah looked crazy when he was building the ark because nobody had ever seen rain before. Nobody had ever seen a flood. And he's saying there's this thing that's coming, there's this thing that's coming, So you do kind of look crazy when you're trying to push a certain narrative that people don't understand. But you have to be steadfast in whatever you believe in. Slowly, people will get it. But and I think it's also important to find your tribe, because your tribe, which even if it's following people on social media, because also the content that we consume is very important, whether you're following the right kind of people who inspire you, people who keep you going, pushing, because I know there are a lot of people who believe in natural hair movements and all of that. There are those things, and if that helps you and that kind of gets your mind going, and it gives you the energy, it gives you the fuel to keep pushing whatever it is that you believe in. I think you have to be grounded in who you are and not swayed by what's deemed as popular at the moment. But you have to be intentional about educating people. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Rulani, you unmute.
Yes, I was saying that you made a lot of sense, and we won't be going to Turkey anytime soon.
Please don't. Please don't. I don't understand why we are buying our own bodies. I don't understand why we are buying our own bodies, why we are being sold our bodies, and we are like, yeah, I would like. How does that make sense? Make it make sense, please.
Mbali, make it make sense. I see you've got your hand up. You've got a question. Please go for it.
I don't know how to make it make sense. I'm also confused. Like, I don't understand it because that's who we are. But thank you so much, Lebo, for the review of your book. While you were speaking, two questions popped into my head, and one of them is that from your personal experience and the inspiration to write the book, do you think that African women are empowered by religion, oppressed by religion? That's my first question. And also the second question is, are there any societal norms that you have identified on women, particularly the African women, that you feel that we should focus on for the next generation to do better? Those are my two questions.
Okay, thank you. I think religion has done a lot for me in building me. I am nothing without God. And it has kept me away from a lot of things. I could have gone a different route, but it has always brought me back and centered me. And it is always good to believe in something beyond yourself. We all need that. But I think the way God has been presented to us previously has been a little bit toxic. We have been taught a God who is scary, a God who is like, I'm gonna send you to hell and you're gonna burn, and then this and that, forgetting that God is love, and what does love mean? What does love mean? And there's room to make mistakes. There's room to learn. There's room to fall. And this process of growing is about understanding. It's about making those mistakes. It's very important to make mistakes. Very, very important. How do you grow? How do you learn when you don't make mistakes? But also understanding that God knows who we are. It says when you were in your mother's womb, before you were formed in your mother's womb, I knew you. So you were designed to have the thoughts that you have, to be the way that you are, to have the inspirations and the passions that you have for a reason. And there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes it may go left to what you've been taught. It may be different, and different is always scary for people. Different is always scary for communities. It's like, okay, so what are you bringing? When you're bringing new ideas, people will always challenge that. But you have to understand that there's nothing wrong in trying something new. There's nothing wrong in you as an individual. As an individual, feeling what you feel, your feelings are also valid. When you feel, even Jesus was angry at some point. Even Jesus, felt tempted in some instances. So who am I to be like, oh, I can't experience human things, human experiences. When I go through them, I feel so condemned by them and feel like, oh my gosh. God knows that. And he sent Jesus as an example for us to say, hey, this is absolutely natural. These are absolutely valid experiences for us as young people, for us as women, for us as, just within families to experience certain things. And yeah, I don't know what was I forgot what the second, and finding.
No problem. I'll repeat the second question. So the second question is, are there any societal norms that you have identified on women, particularly African women, that you feel that we need to focus on for the next generation to do better?
Yes, our beauty standards are stressing me out. And I think that's it. How we are, it's all what I was saying. We follow trends too much. There was a trend when I was coming up, yet yellow bone. Then that died down. Then yellow bone stopped being attractive. Then we went to the duck dindi with that is sexy. Now suddenly, curves, ass, boobs. We are there, and then it's almost like, when are we going to get to a point where we're like, how about, what do you like? You know, and women, we show up in as different as we are all beautiful. And having different examples of beauty there is very important. Having different images, having your dark-skinned girls, having your light-skinned girls, having your curvy girls, having your slenders, having your, you know, it is all beautiful. And this is all of us. We are all of this. We are all of this. And it is not a competition either. Even in different offices and spaces that we occupy, whatever industry that is, there's enough pie to eat for I don't have to hoard it when I have it. And we always live with the scarcity mentality. And that's even how we approach relationships. That's how we approach men. It's like there's a scarcity of men. So, you know, you must get him where you get him, or, you know, Oshapa August we I've got the something, but there's a still nothing going on, you know, because we have the scarcity mentality, even in relationships where we are constantly being pinned against each other as women, not understanding that there's enough space for all of us to exist in harmony, to exist as we are, to be beautiful, and we are beautiful, you know. And I think if we embrace that, we don't need to wait for a Beyonce to do a song called Black is Beautiful for us to be like, yeah, actually, you know, I am beautiful. No. For us to know that, for us to be our own trend setters, where the standards of beauty are concerned, where our careers are concerned, to also, because I also find it challenging where it seems like a lot of the times mentors are men. Men seem to open doors for me. Men seem to open doors, you know, in certain spaces. And whenever I reach out to a woman and say, hey, I'd like to, they hide these secrets. And it's like, but I'm not trying to replace you. I'm not trying to take your space. There's enough space for all of us to exist.
Whoa, such great nuggets, such great nuggets. Thank you so much, Lebo, for spending your evening with us tonight. We really appreciate it. Maybe lastly, if you could just tell everyone where can they find the book and what your social handles are and how can they get in touch with you?
My book is, you can get it at any bookstore. If it's not there, you can ask them to order it for you. You can get it on Take-A-Lot. You can get it on Loot. You can drop me a DM. I can also order it for you. So you can get it directly from me. Or yeah, my handles are Lebo Mazibuko on Facebook. It's Tales by Lebo Mazibuko on Instagram as well. Okay. So you can drop me a DM and I can get your book.
Thank you. We'll be sharing those details with the wider group as well. Thank you so much. And this, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of our session for tonight. See, everyone has been yearning for today, for what we call the magic hour, and really looking forward to seeing you next month at 6 o'clock, 6 to 7 p.m. We will communicate the details on our WhatsApp group and our social media handles. Please follow us, visionary readers, and our mission still remains to see every family in Africa have a bookshelf, at least bigger than their TV screens. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. We will meet again in the next month. Thank you and have a good evening.